And so I will call this meeting to order. December 8th, 2022, 6:30 p.m. Transit and Transit Commission coming to order. We have a quorum. I am here, Bill Horns, Micah Ladoucet, did I say that right? Ladoucet is here, Rich Tate, and Gabriella. So that is a quorum, so we can proceed with the agenda. And I want to do a roll call because I just named the people who are here. And we do have a quorum. Public appearances for non-agenda items. I don't see anybody. You're an agenda item. Approval of the agenda. Would anybody like to move approval of the agenda?
I'll move approval.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. All in favor? Say aye.
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 And opposed? Hearing none, the agenda is approved. Minutes. We all have a copy of the minutes. Are there any comments or discussion about the minutes? If not, a motion to approve the minutes from last time.
I can move to approve.
And I'll second.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And opposed? None, hearing none, the minutes are approved. We're up to discussion items, Madison Metro Transit Study. Bill, could you start us off on that? What's going on there?
I put together a brief memo in the packet that has a lot of links to information because a lot of things have been happening with Metro Transit over the past 3 months. So I did provide a lot of information in there with regard to what they've been doing and the update with that. So essentially what they did is they went through with their Title VI equity analysis and came up with an indication that saying that the metro system that they were proposing would allow more people to get to jobs within 45 minutes. There's fewer traveling to fewer places within 45 minutes, increases in service to neighborhoods, so essentially what they came up with is that it met the requirements of the Title VI. And even though there were some people that weren't happy that some routes were being taken away from them, overall the system showed that there's going to be more service to more people, getting people to and from jobs. So that's what happened. Metro just recently approved their final study and the routes for going forward in 2023 at a meeting earlier this week. And so I haven't had a chance to listen to the minutes of that meeting, but or if there's any discussion on it, but it did ultimately get approved for implementing their new routes for next year. As a caveat to that, the new routes that come into Fitchburg are just primarily, coming in on the north side. They come down Fish Hatchery Road, so they don't really get into the meat of Fitchburg as to how to get people around Fitchburg, within Fitchburg, or connecting to those routes that we could possibly do. Alder Gerhardt had asked for a budget amendment, which was approved for $15,000 to kind of refresh the study or do a new study of what can we do to connect people within Fitchburg to those routes and to the services within Fitchburg. So that's kind of what I'd like to talk about a little bit tonight is over the past 3 months, I really haven't had a chance to dive into any of the services with transit. We've had a lot of vacancies on staff. So, I just kind of picked this up within the week. That's why we got the brief memo. I didn't go and look through all the minutes of all the meetings that it took to get to this place where you decided that you wanted to go forward with this. But within the remaining time that I have left until I retire in January, I'd like to try to get together, what the desires of this commission are with regard to that route study. $15,000, I did check with Metro Transit, is not going to get you very far as what you're going to get for an end product. They're not going to come up and say, this is the route you're going to need. Essentially what they said is you can basically get a needs study done for $15,000 that says, yeah, there's a need for elderly transit, for job-based transfers, for childcare, whatever, they're going to come up and say, these are what your needs are. And this is where they might be located within the city. But to actually come up with a route and a system like that is going to cost a little bit more money. So that's the information that I was able to pull together within the past week or two. And the city of Sun Prairie has gone through a similar service where they had a rideshare program where they would take, or where people could call up a ride and ride within Sun Prairie to different locations there. And they're actually going away from that. They went out and they did a community survey that came back and gave results as to what their needs were, where the locations were that the service was needed. And then they took that to Metro Transit's consultant right now and just said, hey, can you give us like a 5,000-foot guidance on what we should be thinking about? Should we be looking at a ride share? Should we be looking at a circular route? And actually they came up with a circular route, fixed route transit system that they're designing and going forward with in 2023. So they're actually going away from the rideshare program. They said they had some service issues with that, and they felt that to get better service that they needed like a fixed route system or some kind of an internal commuter system. And so I haven't done a whole lot more research than that. I have been in contact with the City of Sun Prairie, Alexander up there, who's a wealth of information and would be willing to, help us out in walking us through something that they've done up there. So, if you can bring me up to speed and give me some direction on what you'd like to see within the next month, I'll try to keep it rolling here and make sure that the next person in line can pick it up and go from there.
Okay, before I had a couple of questions from your memo. One of just specifics, you say down here, Fitchburg will have a public meeting regarding the metro study, the metro system. What is that about? When is that?
We haven't scheduled that, but before they actually put the routes in place and publish them publicly, they will have another public hearing. And prior to that, the city of Fitchburg will be required to essentially approve the final routes within Fitchburg as a public hearing. So that will be scheduled sometime before June. They're planning on putting the new routes in before June. So they will be going forward with that, and they'll be in contact with us with that.
Okay, and then a question on this topic or this subject. There are two issues here. One is the new metro system, and I guess, do we have any concerns about what that is and how that is before it's finalized? And the other is, the other issues that we wanted to raise in this $15,000 study, which were not so much to create an internal transit system. We wanted to address three specific issues. And one of those is how to get people to the civic campus here with the shuttle, not anywhere in town, not a ride share that is sort of open to getting anywhere in town, but how to get people to this vicinity. The other was how to connect people that want to come from the Pick and Save area up to City Hall. That's a glaring gap in the metro system. You can get any place in town. If you want to get from Jamestown to here, you have to go through downtown Madison, I think, on public transportation. And the third issue was exploring having a ride share put in. So there's three kind of specific things that we were hoping to see addressed in this $15,000 study. And so with that, I'll open it up for other comments or thoughts.
I have a couple thoughts. One, we did try a ride share once, and I think we found that people that didn't live in Fitchburg were using more than Fitchburg residents. When we first talked about having a bus run up and down from Target to City Hall and back, I thought eventually we will have one, but I also thought we have so many schools that we go by nearby. Would it be possible to see how we could incorporate serving the schools in Fitchburg like Savannah Oaks and any of those, to coming back and forth from, say, from here to the Target Hy-Vee area. Is that something that would be conceivable? How you know, I'm just putting it out there. Do you think that's possible, or
Yeah, I'd have to take a look at what the previous study had indicated out there, but I could try to put together a proposal. It's just probably going to come in more than the 15,000 to be able to
yeah.
figure out the routes within Fitchburg.
But does that make sense to you? If we are going to focus on buses, I think of, what did I take a bus for when I was young? As a kid, when I learned to drive, I'd drive to my mom's office, park, and take a bus downtown DC. And then later on, when I was a student here, I lived out off Park Street, and I took a bus every day back and forth to class. I don't know what are people still taking buses? I guess I'm also interested in ridership numbers. Now that we should have that readily, though. I don't know if we would want to study, but let's base things on some of the ridership.
Comments? Thoughts? Oh, yeah. Gabriella?
Yeah, I had some feedback about the bus stops specifically. I was taking a look at the maps. Samantha, are you from Metro? I'm sorry, did I miss an introduction from you?
I'm sorry, my fault. Samantha, could you introduce yourself for Gabriella? And
Yep, I'm Samantha. Yep, Samantha Herheim with KL Engineering. I'm here to talk about agenda item B.
Okay, great. Just wanted to make sure you weren't a Metro representative. So,
Yeah.
so I guess I'm directing this at Bill, and then I can certainly provide written feedback if that's helpful. But I think maybe the easiest way to do is I could share my screen. I took some screenshots of the bus route map. Would that be helpful, Bill?
Sure.
Okay.
And just a minor point, if you refer to Bill, you better attach your last name to it.
Bill Balke. Oh, thank you. Yes, Bill Horns, Bill Balke. Okay, so to Bill Balke. So this is just a screenshot of the Williamsburg neighborhood, how the bus route changes. The red is where the bus stops disappeared, green is ads, and black are the existing routes, just for public understanding. Obviously, the bus route no longer runs through this neighborhood, so that makes sense. But I wasn't sure if there was any discussion about adding a bus stop in between these two new green bus stops, just because this whole area here is a huge swath of apartments with quite a lot of individuals. That was a question that I had, and I don't know how the distance is determined, but I wanted to ask the question to Metro. And then the other one that I had concerns about was, this is McKee Road. And this route here all the way down McKee Road is the 75, which goes from downtown all the way out to Verona. It's like the epic kind of line. And right now it stops in multiple places in Fitchburg. And the map, to my knowledge, sounds like they're eliminating all of the Fitchburg stops on the Route 75. I think that would be pretty terrible for Fitchburg. A lot of people do use this route to kind of connect into the Madison network, and basically any individual in this area of town, if they can walk to McKee Road, they could hop on a route during a peak morning or evening in a work day, hop on that Route 75, and that's really the only option for them. So I would be strongly opposed to removing these bus stops. So I also would like a response to that.
All right. I'll forward those.
And then the last thing, I guess, too, is that this is the Duns Marsh kind of Belmar area. There was a lot of discussion about this, moving this route. We kind of jogged the route into the neighborhood instead of it coming down Allied Drive. But this whole route, down all the way, disappeared. And there's a lot of low-income residents, people that rely on bus service that live in this area, that no longer are going to have access to the bus. And unfortunately, the walkability of this neighborhood is really tough. There's no sidewalks in a lot of places, and there's not like a lot of walking connections, especially in this route. I don't know if you can see my pointer.
Yep.
Can you all see my
We
pointer?
can see.
Okay.
Okay.
There's less walkability in this area. So anyway, this particular route is I think, the most devastating loss for the city of Fitchburg. And there's a lot of residents that are very upset about this. And I don't know if there's any possibility of reaching out to this neighborhood specifically and talking to them and maybe providing with them with some resources for how to deal with the loss of a bus route. Because some of these residents might actually need to move locations because of the lack of the bus route. And I don't know if there's been any strategic outreach by Metro for this particular area of town. I assume that's happening in other parts of Madison that are losing access, direct access to bus. So that's a part of town that's very concerning to me. And obviously it makes sense, the bus stops make sense. You're gonna remove bus stops and there's no bus route, but just in particular about reaching out to that neighborhood, I would love to see some targeted outreach there.
Yeah, just to let you know, the alders, some of the alders from the city of Madison had also had that same concern. And Madison Metro said that they will be reaching out to neighborhood specifics on exactly what you said, how to deal with, losing a route, or how to adjust to the new route system. So they will be having outreach and education for those, and I'll make sure that they target this area too.
Great. And I definitely have contacts, even if I have people that can represent the concerns of the neighborhood and connect people. Some of these individuals do not have access to the internet. You can really only talk to them by phone or by going to their door. So I do have direct contact with a couple of them, and I'd be happy to make that connection. But yeah, those are the things that popped out at me, the bus route stops. And I guess I also just, in terms of the comment on the feasibility study, obviously we're going to look at the resolution in a little bit. It sounds like 15,000 is insufficient, which, isn't surprising to me, but Bill, do you have an idea of what might be a better amount that might be able to get us closer to understanding, what options we have in terms of improving transit in the city?
Yeah, I'll have to, I don't have an idea right now, but I am working with Metro to get some better ideas on that with their experts. So I can come back to you with some, but I need to tell them what exactly we want to try to accomplish with the study.
Oh, got it. Yeah, so I guess two things on that. So we're voting on it in council on Tuesday. I would be happy to introduce an amendment to increase the amount. My understanding is that there is quite a bit of staff vacancy funding. I'm sure you can comment on that, Bill. There's more than $15,000 of staff vacancy of funding I think we could transfer. So I could talk to Misty about potentially increasing the amount dedicated to the transit feasibility study. I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility, but if I had a better sense of what the scale is, at an additional 15, is it an additional 25,000? I'm not sure what the level would be. So if it's possible to have even a ballpark number by Tuesday, that's a possibility in terms of getting more money allocated. And that's really our last chance for the fiscal year. And then the other thing I will say is that the memo I put together for the resolution, I think, does speak directly to what we talked about at our last TTC meeting, which I think was back in September, so it was quite a while ago. But we had talked about, I think bus route access throughout the city is a really important issue. We had also highlighted, extending bus route service to the Civic campus, specifically that fish hatchery route, but that obviously doesn't provide access to the entire city, whereas some sort of intra-city bus route would be a better solution citywide. So that's obviously something that would be interesting to see. But then we also talked about park and rides as an option, and that might be that might be a reason to extend the bus route down to the Civic campus. If we could put a park and ride further down Fish Hatchery Road, it would give an additional reason to extend the service down, make it easier to justify that additional cost. And then the third thing was the senior center shuttle, or a shuttle to the Civic campus, which has had a lot of discussion over 2022 in council, in the committee on aging well, in this committee. Just the difficulty of getting seniors to the senior center. They're all obviously related issues, but yeah, that ride share, obviously we've done it in the city before. It's been done in others. There's a challenge there, but we were hoping to get more information about what are the challenges. Is it even possible to do a shuttle? Is there another option we could explore that's not the city paying for it? Is there grant funding available? I don't know what it is, but just trying to tackle that issue of people can't physically get to the Civic campus, in particular seniors trying to get to the senior center. That's a lot of thoughts, but just wanted to throw it all out there.
Yeah. In my understanding, we were interested in three specific things, none of which were a general solution to intercity transit, or they were three specific things. I'm not quite Sure, maybe we take this up when we get to your resolution, but Bill, I'm not sure what the question is, what the misunderstanding is about what we were asking for, by asking for those three things. Is what more is needed to clarify?
So you're looking for a transit shuttle to take people from anywhere in the community to these three places,
To the Civic Campus,
and to a park and ride.
and then a park and ride is a separate issue. The possibility of having a park and ride someplace. And the third specific thing is just the feasibility of getting a bus to run up from Pick and Save to here, or from there. What's the right word for where Pick and Save is? What's that called?
Oh, there's a
Hale
development.
Main area, or Hetch.
Yeah, which,
No, no.
which pick and save?
Yeah, no, the one
Oh,
out
the one-
on Hy-Vee. don't you-
No, not.
Oh, you're talking
about-
up
I'm
here
talking about the one up here
by the
uh,
brewery? No,
yeah, by the Great Dane, that
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
area. I think that's what, I think we were talking about, trying to get that area connected to here. So you can get from the intersection of PD and Fish Hatchery to here on a bus, which you can't do now. But I want to respond to your question better, Bill. I want, because I think you're asking us what the heck do you guys want?
Right.
And I'm trying to answer that.
Yeah, I was pretty much just looking for some guidance on what to ask for. And it's, some clarification that you want either a shuttle or something just for this one area between the two areas. So you're looking between the Hatchery Hill area and the Civic Campus. That's specific.
That's one thing, yeah.
Yeah.
That's one of the three things.
Okay.
And it wouldn't be surprised me if that's a lot to ask for a study of three things at once. So maybe we could, at this point, we're going to be talking about this resolution, maybe that better to just table this discussion until then, and then we can talk about what we're after in the resolution or in the feasibility study. Any other comments? Micah, Rich?
Yeah, we're going to table it, then we'll, yeah, we can talk then.
Okay. Have we given you enough information, Bill, for,
I think so.
okay. Moving on to discussion item 7B, review and provide feedback on intersection alternatives at McCoy Road and South Sain Road Capital City Trail, and that's just what Samantha is here to help us with.
Thanks. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Bill, did you want to give a little bit of background, or would you like me to do that?
You can give it.
Okay.
You can give it this time.
All right. So we are talking about the intersection of Sain Road and McCoy Road. This is the intersection that the city received highway safety improvement funding for. And the intent, the concept was to realign and signalize that intersection and shift the Capital City Trail to cross at that signal. Since then, we've made some design refinements based on, as we're digging into the design, learning more about what's happening in that area. And what we've come to you to discuss today is 3 different alternatives we're looking at. So let me just page down here a little bit. And I apologize, there we go. There we go. All right, sorry. So since that kind of initial concept, what we've ended up doing is instead of having a direct north-south realignment of Sain Road, we've introduced a horizontal curve along here with McCoy Road still teeing into that intersection. The reason we did that was because of some real estate challenges, and this will address some of those challenges.
Could I just want to interrupt, it'll help me a little bit. I looked at these, the three all have that same roadway map, it's in each of
Yes.
these three things. But there is a reference in here to lights and so on. Are there now, or will there be lights where McCoy hits Sain? Is that a?
So the plan is that the intersection will have traffic signals. So it will be, for all of the three alternatives we're showing, they all have traffic signals.
Okay.
Yep.
So this, and I apologize for interrupting, but
Nope.
the issue is how to handle that parking area.
Correct.
That's really the whole question here, and how to connect that to the bike trail.
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So, understandably, as we're getting further into developing these concepts, we were coordinating with the county, and they did raise a concern about proximity of that driveway to the intersection. It's not ideal. Based on the queuing or, traffic backup during busy times when the signal is red, there is the potential that cars are going to be backed up far enough to block that trailhead driveway. So ultimately, we'd like to have driveways outside of that whole functional area of the intersection. And so what we looked at for this alternative one is just kind of a minor tweak, just kind of shifting that driveway a little bit further north to give a little bit more space. Still not ideal. It's still only providing about 100 feet of separation between the driveway and the intersection. And so we came up with a couple of additional alternatives. So the next alternative I'll go to, and bear with me here. So again, looks very similar. Really the only thing we've changed is what this driveway looks like. And what we've done is we've realigned it to come in, and the driveway will become part of that signalized intersection. Now, the difference between this alternative 2, and the next one is how the paths cross this realigned driveway.
The bike path.
Yep, exactly. So for this alternative 2, and just so you know, this is kind of the mid-range as far as expensive, between least and most expensive, mid-range as far as impacts. So this is kind of the mid-range one. But what is happening here, and what I guess I specifically want to point out, is that even though this is sort of that mid-cost, mid-range option, the trail ends up crossing this driveway twice. So it crosses here, kind of like a sidewalk would cross a driveway at an intersection.
Okay.
And this is that sort of north-south unnamed trail that runs along Sain Road. And then the trail would again cross about here. And this is the Capital City Trail, kind of running east-west. So that's 2 driveway crossings, which isn't ideal. So then, I guess moving into alternative 3, and this is the most expensive of these 3 alternatives. But the difference in this alternative is, again, same sort of driveway configuration. It's going to be as part of that signalized intersection. We still have that north-south that north-south path crossing the driveway, kind of at the intersection like you would see a sidewalk crossing a driveway at an intersection. And then that east-west Capital City Trail actually gets relocated and goes around that existing trailhead parking area to remove that conflict. When we were putting these packets together, we had provided this information to Dane County for their review and consideration based on their concerns. I did find out late Monday that they had gotten a chance to review it. And they said they are in favor of alternative 3, although they would want to know, kind of what the city and committees are in favor of as well.
Okay.
So,
But
When you say mid-range, high-range, are there actual estimated numbers attached to those? Or-
not yet. Ultimately, adding another leg to the intersection is going to be in maybe the $25,000 range. And then, adding, this sort of additional trail length. Part of that cost is that when we started looking at this intersection, we didn't do wetland delineation in this area. There's going to be some design and some construction costs. And we just didn't have those numbers immediately available.
Gabriella.
Okay. Yeah, Gabriella.
Thanks, Bill. Thanks so much for the presentation. I'm curious, so I'm concerned about the wetland delineation and just the possibility of eking into the wetland and then requiring offsets, which obviously is extraordinarily expensive. Obviously you have to do the delineation to, know where the wetland is. Do we anticipate we might actually be crossing into wetland if we do that reorientation of the trail?
Based on kind of initial review with Dane County, it looks like that area is primarily outside of the actual wetland area, but it does have wetland indicator soils, so we have to have a wetland delineator go out and check it out. That said, the project does have wetlands impacts because we're realigning the roadway. So because we're impacting kind of the ditches and we're shifting things around, we are going to have some impacts. So, having that sort of additional area for that trail relocation won't substantially change the overall kind of level of what we're doing with the roadway. And just as a kind of a side note, this project is a little bit different because it does have federal funding through the safety program that DOT administers. And so the wetland impacts are handled through the DOT wetland banking system. So it's a little bit different than if it was a wetland impact just as a local project. It's kind of a streamlined process.
Okay.
So would we incur the costs of those wetland? Or would that be covered by the grant?
It's part of the project cost.
Okay, and so the
Yeah.
project cost, let me be clear, so the project cost is completely covered by the grant and the design cost is covered by the city of Fitchburg? Is that the breakdown?
The construction cost is, the funding is a 90% federal funding grant to a 10% local funding grant up to a cap. I don't remember the exact funding spread for this. It could be, and I apologize, I just don't remember off the top of my head, it could be that Fitchburg does have a little bit more than a 10% construction cost. And that said, the funding is set at the amount that was applied for. So as we're kind of making these adjustments and expenses are increasing, the construction cost is generally set based on what was applied for. That said, we can go back to the DOT and ask if they can adjust any of the funding, but we would have to be including improvements that meet their, and I'm not going to remember the right term, basically their crash modification factors, which is how they fund this program. So the trail realignment, I don't know that that's one of the categories, but I can explore that with them.
Yeah. Go ahead. I'm very concerned about the cost. This sounds that all of these changes. Obviously, there's already changes with the road, but obviously the shift in the road already seems like going to be an increased cost. I could be wrong about that, but then also reorienting the trail and the driveway seems. I'm very concerned about cost. I mean, obviously, our estimates are always seem to be like half of what the actual costs are. I have a lot of concerns about making such a significant change with potential wetland impacts. I'm very concerned about that.
Yep.
So, Bill or Samantha, you had a meeting with the bike committee on Wednesday?
Yes.
Did they have I'm curious to know what their issues or concerns were on this.
They felt that alternative 3 was safer, and so everybody that was at the meeting supported alternative 3.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of a dilemma. I mean, I think the cost issue is important. I mean, if going from from 2 to 3 precludes having a decent feasibility study of a shuttle to the, I mean, there are trade-offs
Right.
ultimately. I think that's
Absolutely.
why Gabriella is concerned, but I think it's hard for our commissions, bike committee or us, to sort of know how to value that, you know,
Sure.
how much weight to put on those cost
But-
issues.
Go ahead.
No,
I bike this road all the time.
Yeah.
The difference between 2 and 3 to me, like, is 3 safer than 2? I mean, yes, you are crossing the road one less time, but it's also a driveway
Yeah.
to a parking lot that you've already crossed once, and you would then be crossing almost immediately again if you're going that way. Like, you've already slowed down to cross the driveway the one time, so to cross it again, I don't see, like, and then to have the increase of then that involving you then having to reroute the entire path all the way around. I mean, like, in an ideal scenario, yes, 3 is better, but I don't see that I would be, like, really impacted by having to cross that road twice.
I had that same thought, you know, I've ridden my bike on the Capital City Trail hundreds of times, and that's not a intensely used parking lot. You know, there's some cars in there, and you'll see a few people around, but it's not like busy traffic. So my personal feeling would be that it's not worth much extra cost to reroute it that way. But that's why I asked about the bike group. If they may have other thinking or, you know, reasons for saying it's important to reroute it, but my instincts are it's not so important.
I was thinking that it's a trailhead parking, so it's going to be, I would think, much safer for any cyclists crossing the driveway, because the people that are coming and going are probably just cross it themselves. But, and I at first liked the third option the best until I went back to page 1 and saw this one line, most expensive. You know, that kind of kills it. But could we not do, let's just say we were to adopt, I would push for number 2, but we could always change that in the future, can't we? If we want to do this as option 2 now, and then maybe a year or 2 down the road, take that access and go around the thing. Because essentially the only difference between numbers 2 and 3 is that trail crossing goes around or straight, correct?
Correct.
And so we could fix that at a later date, or maybe even during this one, just if we put down a base or whatever, so that, you know.
I mean, signalizing that intersection makes that bike crossing way safer than
Yes.
option 3 does over option 2. I mean, like, that is the big increase in safety over, like, the current state.
Yeah.
Okay, other thoughts? Gabrielle?
Yeah. You're muted.
Could you just repeat the reason why moving the driveway to the signalized intersection is better than the original number 1? Could you just explain
Yep.
that rationale between number 1 and number 2 again?
Absolutely. Let me just pull up number 1 again, maybe. Nope. Sorry. And let me zoom in here a little bit, because I think part of it is... I think that's a little bit easier to see.
Yeah.
So what ends up happening is, you know, we have about 100 feet from where cars are going to stop here to back to where the driveway entrance is going to be. So, you know, when traffic is kind of at its peak, there is the potential for cars to kind of back up and even, you know, block this driveway entrance. It's not totally clear to me, and I've talked to the county about this, and they're not sure either, you know, if there's like a peak time for the trailhead use. You know, that's not necessarily at the same time as peak time for roadway use. But there is that potential conflict point. I will point out the other kind of component to this, which really wasn't part of any of the write-up or discussion, but is another thing to consider, is that with the driveway being here, and providing full access, which is what the county wants for the trailhead, we end up having this kind of small, help me with where we were at with, I know Gabriella had a question that we were kind of talking about, but then I know we were also, yep.
I was asking, like, if you could talk a little bit more about why moving the driveway is important, 1 versus
Yep.
2 and or 3, you know?
Yep. So I guess, I think we left off, we were kind of talking about this, having this small raised median area, but then having, the rest of this open for full access. So people driving from any direction could pull into that trailhead driveway. So there's the potential if there's cars kind of backed up along here, that they could be blocking the driveway. There's the potential that people could be, kind of coming through here and wanting to pull in here and hang out and wait to pull into the driveway. There are more potential conflict points. Now that said, there are driveways near intersections all over the place. But in a perfect world, we don't want driveways in the functional area of an intersection. So, if we anticipate, we're projecting that traffic is going to increase on the roadway. I think it's fair to assume that traffic is going to increase on the paths, and it's probably pretty likely that usage of the trailhead will increase. But how much that increases, how far down the road that goes, that's not information that we have readily available. I can tell you that the county does not have any sort of short-term plans to improve this trailhead area. So, that's, I guess, information that can be used as part of this whole decision.
And then my other question was why, going from 1 to 2, what wetlands are
Yep.
encroached on?
So,
Or potential wetlands?
Yep. So we have this area that's actually that is actually wetlands that was
Okay.
delineated. Depending on how far back we need to connect, we may be able to get away with the delineated area we already had.
Oh,
Realistically, there's so many wetlands in this area, and there's so many soils that look like they could be wetlands. That's really what it's coming down to.
Okay, now this is a discussion item, so we're not looking for a vote on this here and now. So are there any other comments or thoughts about it?
I think it'd be helpful if we could take an informal vote with a preference, just so I can bring that
Huh?
forward, if that's okay.
Okay,
I know it's not official, but.
we can do that.
Well, Gabriella is starting to change my opinion here a bit.
Yeah,
I think, are we in agreement?
I was at 2 and now you got me down to 1. I don't see, the ones, I don't care if people are coming, south on Sain and get caught in traffic and have to wait an extra 3 minutes to pull into the driveway.
Yep.
I do see a little bit if they are turning right from McCoy and stop short.
This kind of this is
Right,
what you're
and
talking
then
about.
stop short, turning into
Yeah.
the driveway. But I also don't ever see that many cars in that
Well,
way.
that's why I
No
wanted
one's
to
in that
ask you.
parking lot.
I didn't even know it was there.
There's no
Okay.
one parks there.
Is it a gravel or a paved?
Gravel.
It's gravel.
All right,
Yeah.
so,
And so if you're, how far back is, so in this is if you moved it,
Correct.
right, this? Okay.
Yeah.
And so if you didn't move it, the current entrance is shifted this way, right? It's
Yeah, the current
Right.
entrance would, I mean, if we just dropped it straight down, it would be more like here.
Okay.
This, we're just sort of trying to bring it up a little bit.
Well, I would
And then the
say,
bike path doesn't cross it at all.
right, right.
Correct.
I would say if the
Correct.
traffic people
yeah.
would say that's a safe driveway from the perspective of traffic, how driveways are handled every place in town. I can't see a reason to not do option 1, a strong
Yeah,
argument.
I'm flipping. I'm agreeing with you on that.
Yeah, the thing too is that it just wetlands, if we have to, I mean, my understanding is that if you encroach on wetlands, you have to pay a lot of money for like wetland offsets. And please, Bill or somebody have to correct me if I'm wrong, but I learned a little bit more about this when we were talking about the Lake Barney project, and I don't know, it just, the cost, it cost matters to Pittsburgh. It's, you know, our budgets are limited, and it just doesn't, again, I agree, I just don't know if it's enough of a problem to justify that much of an unknown cost that could potentially be pretty devastating, especially if the amount of the grant is not changing. You know, we're adding cost that's gonna go straight to Fitchburg's contribution, so. And I also don't see a lot of people around here, and because these are wetlands, this area is not gonna get developed. There's no, you know, apartment buildings going in here. This is an E-way, right? This is a environmental corridor, so.
Correct.
But I mean, this intersection obviously needs to be dealt with, but I just don't know if it's, I lean towards number one as well.
And I mean, honestly, that right turn right now, before you even redesign it, like that issue is there now. If you come up McCoy and turn right and want to turn in there and someone else is behind you, like, it's there now and it doesn't seem to be an issue, so. Yeah, I would probably vote for one.
All right. If there are no other comments and thoughts, we can move on to item 7C. And I just wanted to say, I'll make this very short and sweet. We've canceled a few meetings, and with good reason. Some of them being we didn't have an agenda. But my feeling, which I would, unless you argue me out of it, but for the future, is to always have a meeting. It's a published notice on our webpage that we meet on whatever this is, Thursday of the month at 6:30. And I think people, what that means is it gives a concerned citizen about any transportation issue to know when a place they can come in and get a voice. I mean, they don't call me, not that anybody ever does, but I think it's a good idea to have a meeting at a scheduled time. The other thing we can always have is some conversation with city staff about what's going on with whatever. I just think it's good to keep a little conversation going, and it's worth a short meeting, even if we just cancel the meeting as soon as we meet. So that'll be my approach, is to not cancel meetings. But does anybody want to talk me into a different approach?
No, I think that's a good idea. I have my calendar filled out, both in my phone, computer, and the paper one on the wall. January 1st, they're all marked. And I just the staff report and ongoing concerns, and I like your point about the public.
Okay. Are there any other thoughts on that? All right.
I'll just say one thing. I mean, I think if we decide on earlier that we cancel the meeting, obviously when it's already noticed, you know, and then we have to update the agenda to say meeting canceled. I think that's bad practice.
Yeah.
If we saw that we had a slow month coming up and we're saying like we'll go ahead and a month in advance cancel a meeting, I think that's appropriate. And I think that's sometimes nice from a staff perspective if there is a slow month to go ahead and cancel it and not have them stay late.
I mean,
But I agree that like changing the agenda to say it's canceled is not good practice.
I mean, if we know in advance that we don't have a quorum or anything, like if we know in advance like most of the group's not going to be available, or if there's a July or something that everyone's on vacation, or.
Okay.
I agree in general. Yeah.
And I don't like being in a situation of having to decide to cancel a meeting. It's just uncomfortable to make that decision for me. So my inclination would be to have it. If you guys at the prior meeting want to cancel the next month's meeting, that'll be your decision. You can make that motion and pass it, and we'll go with that.
No, I want to hear staff report, even if it's 5 minutes. Just, this is what we're working on. By the way, this is happening and hey, did you see the Brewer game last week? You know, it doesn't, but I agree.
All right. On to action item. We have an action item, Resolution R20522. And this is the work of Gabriella Gerhardt. So maybe, Gabriella, you could introduce this for us.
I sure can. Should I start with a motion or should we?
Sure. Why don't you move it and we can.
All right, I'll move approval of Resolution R20522, amending the 2022 General Fund Budget Transit Study.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. We have a motion on the floor, and Gabriella, floor is yours.
So, I worked on trying to get an amendment for the budget to fund the intercity transit feasibility study. There was no money that I could find in the budget to accommodate that. So instead, I talked to Misty about potentially using current 2022 vacancy funding. Given the fact that we've been without a transportation engineer for a significant portion of the year, there's obviously staff funding that will presumably just roll into the general fund. So I asked her to take a look and see if that was possible. She said there was plenty of funding. So we are transferring $15,000 of that funding dedicated to a transit study. The 15,000 was just the last number that I had heard bandied about. And obviously I want to hear more from Bill Balke about this, but that was the only reason for the 15,000. My amendment, the background that I provided, I think represents the conversations that we've had in TTC and also the conversations that were had throughout 2022. I tried to summarize it in as brief a way as possible to kind of give context for why we want to move forward with the feasibility study. And Alder Herbst is a co-sponsor because he was the one that typically put in the amendments for senior center vehicle over and over again because he's on the Committee of Aging well, so he co-sponsored it with me since that was something we had discussed as part of the scope of the feasibility study. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a pretty, but I'm happy to answer questions and I'm interested to hear more from Bill Balke too.
All right, any other comments, thoughts from members? Bill, did you, I think again, I want to just come back to make sure you're getting the information you need or that, about what this is and what we're after here.
Yeah, it looks like, Gabriella, your memo does indicate that you're looking for, is it feasible to have a transit shuttle between Civic Campus, Park and Rides, and the extension of the Hatchery Hill area?
Right.
And
sorry to interrupt, but I think we were thinking, I was thinking, they're really separate questions. It's not one question, is any of this feasible? It's three questions. Is the Park and Ride feasible? Is the connection to Fitchburg Ridge feasible? And is the transit shuttle feasible? There are three questions that we'd be asking from this study. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm sorry if I interrupted.
No, so you're looking for, costs for each one of those service connections.
Yeah, or at least some ideas, some more information about
Can I ask
the
where
feasibility.
is the farthest down fish hatchery that the new bus route, where does it end?
McKee.
It goes all the way to McKee.
But I think it ends at King Main actually. I don't
It
think
ends
it
at
goes
Kale
to
Main.
corner.
Okay.
I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
Right. The 75 or, the one that goes down to Verona
Yes.
goes down to McKee, but.
Okay.
And coming from the other direction, you can come across it on McKee as far as that intersection. I mean, if you were coming from Ivy area and wanted to get over here, you could get that close.
If you could get some bus stops in there, like Gabriella pointed out.
Right, yeah, except all the buses.
Okay. Gabrielle?
If I could comment.
Yeah.
I will say that Bill, we just had so much conversation about this in the last year. I think that's why we've kind of dove into this. And these were just our suggestions. Obviously, be interested in the perspective of the senior transportation engineer or the transportation engineer whenever they are hired, and potentially the new public works director as well. But ultimately, there is this ongoing issue with the access to the senior center, and a lot of people know it's an issue. They want to solve it, but we really just don't know if it's possible to even run a shuttle. And it's not really so much I don't think it's the same model really as the Sun Prairie shared ride taxi. I don't know if it's the same model as that, but really just kind of a way for us to shuttle people to the Civic campus that need to get there as sort of a stopgap solution until we potentially could create a fixed route within the city to move people around the city on the bus. Because my understanding is that even an extension of the Fish Hatchery Road from Cale, Maine down to the Civic campus would cost something in the range of like $200,000 a year, which is what, a third of the budget. You know, like that would balloon our bus budget. And maybe 10 years, 20 years down the road, maybe that'd be an easy cost. But right now, obviously, that would be a challenge. But maybe if you added a park and ride, maybe there would be a reason to extend it and increase ridership. And maybe Metro was talking about maybe they would want an endpoint for electric bus charging stations, so it would behoove them to have a point at the end of Fish Hatchery for them to charge. And maybe there was some arrangement we could make. I've had lots of conversation about this, like here at TTC, with the council, even with Metro separately. So I think that there's something that we can do to make this better, but in terms of feasibility, like I'm thinking, like, what is this actually going to cost us? Like, can we even do a shuttle? Like, is it even possible to put it in our budget? You know, at what point will the cost become reasonable enough for us to add it in? So I guess like getting a sense of what that cost is and whether or not it's even possible to do was sort of where we were at. We're dealing with this really serious transportation issue. You know, what will it cost? And so we can make those cost benefit analysis of whether or not we want to invest in that in the near future.
And just a minor tweak or minor point, it's not just transportation to the senior center, it's also about transportation to the city hall and to the library.
Yeah.
Those are needs that are.
That was going to be my exact point as well. It's just that I think like there's a lot of focus on the senior center, which I think is good because I think there's a lot of like push from there, and it seems like that has been in the works for a really, really long time, or like a pain point for a really, really long time. But I think it's really important to have access to the library too. A lot of people just don't have an ability to get to the library, and I think that's something that should really be put.
I always
like,
thought
at the
somebody who
forefront.
loses their license at court needs a ride home.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah. But that's
I know,
Not that I know.
even like months ago, Andrew had like that chart of he had like 6 options with a bunch of costs and stuff,
Yeah.
and like a lot of the options had like no service on weekends, which is
Yeah.
when people might want to come down to the library. And like I get that the city hall is closed, but like that's the time when people could come down to the library. So
I think there's a whole world of stuff that could be looked at too with this, and like I mentioned, the schools. You know, I grew up in another area, but if you stayed late after school, you could take a city bus home, you know?
Okay, so if there's no more discussion, I think we're ready for a vote on this resolution. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of?
Oh wait, I'm sorry, Bill. Could I propose maybe a potential amendment? The transition committee, an amendment to just add to the, not a change to the resolution, but a recommendation to add funding if it's available, to potentially expand the budget to match the scope that we've discussed.
Say it again.
Yeah, yeah.
Where are the?
Yeah, sorry. So I feel like we might be able to put more money towards this. I want to explore that, and I'll talk to the finance director about it.
Okay.
But just given the fact that Bill Balke said what we've talked about can't be done in $15,000.
Yeah.
I think I'd just like for the Transition Transit Committee to say that we would like more money to be added to this, to be determined by the Public Works Director and the Finance Director, you know, whatever is feasible so that we can actually accomplish this.
Okay, so
So-
under the third whereas this feasibility is expected to cost $15,000 or more. Add those two words before the semicolon. And then farther down, amend the general fund budget to redirect it, and 15,000 or more. Does that work for?
Yeah, maybe oh, go ahead. Sorry, someone.
No,
Yeah.
Maybe just add a clause and you know, an additional funding. I'm trying to decide how the best way to do it.
You need this by next week, right?
Yeah, that goes to council on Tuesday. And so we can, I honestly, maybe it's not an amendment, but I guess I just want to ask the question if the committee would like us to put more funding behind it, if we can make that work.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, like we're gonna spend money, let's spend the amount of money
Yeah,
that it
let's
takes
do it
to
right
actually
the
do
first
it.
time.
Yeah.
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 Okay. I'll bring that to council, and then I
Sure.
can talk to Bill Balky and Misty Dodge about potentially if we can dedicate more staff vacancy funding towards
Sure.
this so that we can actually accomplish it.
Okay, yeah, I think we'd be all happy to get more money for this study.
Great.
Okay, that having been said, all those in favor of this resolution indicate by saying aye.
Hi.
Aye.
Aye.
That's unanimous. So the resolution is approved by Transportation and Transit Commission. Item 9 on the agenda, report from department. Bill.
All right, we've been busy in the engineering department, getting our designs ready for next year for the Lacey Road and Seminole Highway intersection project. We're getting ready to bid that out in January, so we'll be hitting the streets with that, and then construction will start probably in April. There's going to be some utility relocates early next year that need to be done, and then the contractor will be following up shortly after that with start of construction. So that's planned to be completed all of next year. The roundabout at the intersection will be completed over this summer and open to traffic, so we'll have that open before school starts. And that's our goal for that project there. Sain Road over here, we'll continue the construction next year, finishing that project up. We ran into some issues with the utility relocates and supply chain with materials and concrete. So we had to do a temporary, just get it together before it snows type of fix, which the contractor pulled through and was able to get that done.
It's good because it's gonna snow tonight, so.
Yeah.
So we got it temporarily opened back up again, then we had to close it down for a sanitary sewer crossing that we were working on for the past 2 weeks, but it will be opened back up on Monday. Next year, they'll be completing that construction from Aurora all the way up through East Sherrill intersection, plus Lacey Road, through the roundabout with new railroad crossing and signals at the intersection of Lacey and up at East Sherrill Parkway. So we got that coming through, and yeah, we're starting out, we're doing an RFP for the Fitchburg Road project reconstruction that's up for construction in 2024. That one, we are looking to get a consultant on board to get the design completed and bid for 2024. So we're starting that process out. There'll be lots of public meetings on that because it's going to change, the way it looks out there. We are including, a bike path proposed, along with bike lanes on the roads, so it'll be fully accessible to anybody going to and from the area, and providing that needed connection between the Nesbitt Trail or the Nesbitt Roundabout and the Military Ridge parking lot there. So that's coming forward with lots of meetings to come. And transit, I guess. I got a grant that's due tomorrow at 3 o'clock, so I've got to finish that up tonight and get that in. So we do have the new routes as programmed in there, so there's additional for the Southdale neighborhood and the offshoot route into Terra Vesta. We've included all those in there, so we are looking at getting some funding for that for next year to offset our costs for the transit costs. And yeah, I'm trying to get your RFP out for the shuttle system here, and well, I'm just doing whatever I can to move things along.
I appreciate all you do in your last days at the helm. I know you're doing a lot. I know it's a busy
When
time.
is the Lacey Road construction starting?
Lacey Road construction will start start next year in April.
In April?
Yep.
Okay.
Are you leaving the end of January?
January 13th.
You going to stay in town?
I'll be here for a while.
January 13th is my son's birthday. Where are you going to head after that? Any particular area in the country, or?
We're just going to head up the north side of Madison.
Oh.
Got some things to do up there.
Just a question, I don't know if you know anything about this, I noticed there's talk about the sighting of a passenger rail station, and there was some public meetings.
Oh,
There
yeah.
was a Zoom meeting about that. Are you at all, just curious if you know anything about that, or, I know we have a railroad track that comes out to Fitchburg, and I've always hoped that someday we'd have a train on it that went into Madison. So do you know anything about this?
I haven't been following that.
Yeah,
no.
okay.
I like the Oscar Mayer site. I was looking at those.
All right, any other questions for Bill?
Just a comment. I just want to say, Bill, thank you so much for your service to the city. And especially, I know this last couple of years has been extraordinarily stressful with staff vacancies. So, and I know you really go above and beyond, always, but especially in those times when you, by necessity. So thank you so much for all your service to the city.
All right.
You've made quite an impact here, all the things that you've accomplished when you're here. So thank you.
All right.
So will you will still be at the helm
No.
at the time of our next meeting?
Oh, yeah, by one day.
Yep. Yeah.
I just want to say, every time I show up to a meeting in person, someone either is their last meeting or they announce that it's going to be their last meeting. So no one's allowed to quit in January if I show up.
So who after you? Who are we going to be dealing? Do we know?
We don't know yet.
Okay. All right. We'll hope for the best.
Well, all the staff that I've been on in my life, I've been on cable, which became broadband, planning. I was on Public Works for a few months before I went to plan. This one, I'm on Board of Review also, and the city staff is phenomenal.
Yeah. Yep, no doubt. All right. Thank you very much. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll move to adjourn.
Thank you.
Second?
And a second, and all those in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
Aye.
Aye. So none opposed. We are adjourned. Thank you all.